your friend Mr. Pickles on Question Time a few weeks ago.
I did, yes. I think Eric himself.
Okay, we're not recording. So you're in Huddersfield today, Mr. Grayling. What have you been doing?
What I'm doing is two things really. First of all, I'm here to support Jason's local candidate in Colne Valley, but I'm also spending quite a lot of time at the moment going around talking to police officers at different levels, from chief constables down to the neighbourhood officer, really about police process issues, about crime issues, about antisocial behaviour, the powers they have, the powers they don't have. So I've been out in Lindley talking to the neighbourhood constable there, talking to some of the shopkeepers about antisocial behaviour issues and the experiences they have at the moment. And it's all, from my point of view, part of putting together a jigsaw puzzle of understanding the nature of the challenge around the country, and in particular how we help the police address it better.
Is this a part of the country where you're looking to make gains at the next election?
This is definitely a part of the country that's an important battleground. It's somewhere where we hope to get extra MPs. I think we've got a very good team. Jason McCartney here, other team members around West Yorkshire, where I feel very optimistic we've got a very good chance of winning seats. I think that's tempered by a degree of caution. We've got a big challenge. We've got to earn people's respect and their willingness to support us over the next few months. The current government may be in a state of shambles, but that does not mean that a Conservative victory is automatic. We've got a big hurdle to climb in many seats. We're dealing with some quite well-established MPs in some areas. Reasonably big majorities we have to overturn. Sometimes we're up against Liberal Democrats. So it's far from easy across either West Yorkshire or indeed across the country. And I'm certainly not sitting there confident of a Conservative victory in a year's time. I'm optimistic about one, but I think we've got a long way to go and a lot of work to be done on the ground, which is why it's also important that someone like myself is here in West Yorkshire, listening to the issues, understanding what people in Huddersfield are saying, understanding the policing and crime issues in this area, and also giving backing to a really good local candidate.
Yeah, Mr. McCartney, if I may move on to you. What do you think your prospects are now of winning at the next election? I mean, are you getting a good reception on the doorsteps these days?
Yeah, I would say my prospects have been the same as they have been for the last 2 years and 2 months. You know what the situation is. It's a great opportunity to have somebody that can actually represent people in the local area. We're working as hard as we ever were. We've sort of broken the campaign down into chunks. We've got the European elections coming up in a month's time. And you know from what I've been doing, I'm just concentrating on local issues, which is what I want to do. I want to give people of this area a voice in Westminster. Things like the New Mill Library closing, the cuts to bus services, the post offices, the maternity services campaign. These are all sorts of things I want to have a bigger voice on. I've got a voice on it at the moment, but as the Member of Parliament, I really would be able to stand up for people in this area, and that's what I want to do. That's what I'm doing.
What is the Conservative position now on public services after the budget? I mean, the Conservatives are not supporting the 50p tax rate, so the country is massively in debt.
I read your column actually where you talked about that, and you made some. Well, I was actually in Cheltenham on Sunday afternoon, and I listened to all of David Cameron's speech, and I know you referred to that speech as well. And David Cameron quite clearly said, although we're not a party of taxation, we do have priorities, and our main priority is overturning the increase in national insurance that has affected people on earning £19,000 a year, and that's top of our priority list, because we want to help people who are hard-working families that are being given all these stealth taxes. And that's top of the list of our priorities, and that's straight from the boss's mouth. That was David Cameron speaking on Sunday afternoon. So we all know the 50p tax thing is a bear trap, and it was done for political shenanigans as much as anything else. But our main priorities, as always have been, and I'm proud to be a Conservative at the moment, because we genuinely are representing every aspect of society, from welfare to medical services to local services. So I'm very proud to be a Conservative at the moment.
Figures have come out today that show that the number of people being stopped and searched under anti-terrorism powers have tripled.
Yep.
And you had some critical remarks about the police stopping people too.
Well, it wasn't so much about the police stopping people too much. The issue, to my mind, is about the anti-terror laws themselves. Now, I am absolutely clear that we have got to take all steps necessary to combat the terror threat. But what's happened in the last few years is that the government's introduced a series of measures to combat terror, which have now developed mission creep across government. So some of the anti-terror laws are being used, believe it or not, by local authorities to check out whether you're using your recycling bin properly. The government has powers under anti-terror laws to use, for example, electronic intercept evidence to check whether you're paying your taxes or not. I think that's wrong. I think we all understand the need for tough action against terror, but that should not give the government the excuse to take any power that it introduces for serious purposes like that and use those powers for whatever it wants. And we had, the figures yesterday were 124,000 people had been stopped and searched under anti-terror laws. To my mind, that's a stretch, and that says to me, I'm concerned those powers are being used for other purposes. Now, there's nothing wrong with police stopping and searching people. They have powers to do that already, but they shouldn't be using the anti-terror powers to do it.
Yeah. But moving back to you, Mr. McCartney, the Conservatives have gone quite hard on civil liberties recently, with Mr. Grayling's, one of his predecessors, David Davis, of course, resigning over this issue. Is this something that people bring up on the doorsteps? Are they worried about abuse of anti-terror legislation or surveillance society?
I think they are, and I can think of particular emails and letters and phone calls that they've had, because people are worrying, and quite rightly so, that it's the law-abiding people that are having their civil liberties impinged by this, whilst the actual criminals themselves aren't being tackled. So the priorities are in the wrong place, and I think people are quite rightly worried about it as well.
And the other big issue of the week is MPs' expenses, and of course there was a vote whereby Outer London MPs, like yourself, I believe, have lost the second home allowance. But between 2001 and 2007, you claimed just over £100,000 for a flat you have in Westminster, and your constituency home is in Surrey, and I believe it's just inside the M25. It's less than 20 miles from Westminster. Do you think that was an appropriate use of taxpayers' money?
Well, I've always said there are two things about this. First of all, every MP should be absolutely transparent about what they do, and I've always been very open about my own arrangements. I've written articles in the local paper about it. I've always published details on my website about it. As an MP, particularly as a senior frontbencher, I have an extremely erratic life. I work most nights of the week. I'm in Westminster or in central London till around 11 o'clock at night. I'm very often around the country, getting back late. As we do this interview, I'll be back in London late tonight on Friday night. And the nature of the job means that actually it makes my job a lot easier to have a flat in central London. Now, as long as I'm open about that, as long as it's within the rules, and as long as I tell my constituents, and I've had constituents, even from other parties, write to the local paper defending me for what I do, then I think that's fair, right and proper. Now, the rules are now changed. I have to accept that. It'll make my life more awkward than it would otherwise have been, but there's no point in me jumping up and down about that. That's the rules. They've changed, and I'll go along with that.
But quite a big segment of that is because of MPs in Outer London who've been claiming second home allowances.
Yeah, but the question I would ask in return is that if your employer was expecting you to work late every night, you might very well say, well, actually, I'd expect them to pay for me to stay overnight rather than to commute back after midnight.
Yeah.
The truth is the nature of the job is very erratic, and I think the only sensible thing that an MP can do is be absolutely open and transparent about what they do and why. And I've been gratified by the fact that, as when I have been open, I've had very few comments from my constituents, and those that I had have been more supportive than not.